Good morning, folks. Welcome back to the Food for the Faithful channel with me, Bill Reimer, your reluctant prophet. You may be reluctant to hear what I have to say today, but it's really quite simple how to spot a phony. This entire facade that's being erected by our social collectivist cadre of political tricksters is built on lies. We're going to examine why and the nature of the lies. If there's one thing above all else that those who have surrendered their individual autonomy to the faithless social collective detest, it's reality. Have you noted that they spend all of their resources and ours trying to create a society that lives on permanent life support? That's why this government is so indebted. By that I mean that they demand to recreate the world around them based upon ought rather than what is. All their efforts are exerted to distort reality into their dystopian image. This is why they insist that human sexuality is not biological, but rather a subjective experience. They both loathe and fear reality so much that they are willing to deny its very existence. Dr. Gad Sad released an episode of The Sad Truth the other day that describes the reason for their attempt to legislate falsity, entitled, "What do Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Joe Rogan have in common?" The Sad Truth, episode 1777. I provide the link. His conclusion was glaringly simple. None of them are phonies. Like them or loathe them, they are genuine and do not project an affected image to the public. No matter who their audience is, you are still seeing the same guy. While the narcissist, on the other hand, is completely dependent on creating an image that hides their severe narcissistic vulnerability. The narcissist will create a fake persona to control how they've perceived to seek admiration and validation. If that doesn't describe Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland, I don't know what does. It's all about feeding their ego while masking their insecurities. Narcissistic insecurities stem from deep-seated fears and vulnerabilities. Despite projecting confidence, they often have fragile self-esteem and depend heavily on external validation. This need for admiration is a way to shield their inner doubts. The facade helps them feel more in control and less exposed. It's quite a paradox, isn't it? People who seem so self-assured can actually be struggling underneath. Here is a list of characteristics of a pathological narcissist and why they appear false despite their ostensible charm. Characteristics of a pathological narcissist. Exaggerated sense of self-importance. They often believe they are superior to others and expect to be recognized as such. Lack of empathy. They have difficulty understanding or valuing the feelings and needs of others. No wonder Canada is in the condition it's in, especially heading into this Christmas. Need for excessive admiration. They constantly seek validation and praise to boost their fragile self-esteem. Sense of entitlement. They expect special treatment and compliance with their expectations. Manipulative and exploitive behavior. They use others to achieve their goals. Envy of others. They may feel envious of others' successes or believe others are envious of them. Arrogant or haughty behaviors or attitude. They display a patronizing or dismissive demeanor. Why narcissists appear so false. Insecurity and low self-esteem. Despite their grandiose exterior, narcissists often have deep-seated insecurities. Their self-worth is heavily reliant on the approval and admiration of others. Defense mechanism. The false front serves as a defense mechanism to protect against feelings of inadequacy and vulnerability. Image control. They carefully construct and maintain a persona they believe will earn them the validation and admiration they crave. Fear of rejection, fear of being exposed or rejected for their true selves, drives them to maintain the facade at all costs. Why do narcissists often wear masks during protests? This is what we saw in Montreal last weekend. The protesters are always wearing masks. Narcissists wear masks while protesting can be seen as a metaphor for their behavior in everyday life. Masks serves multiple purposes for them. Protection of identity, just as they hide their true selves behind a facade in social situations, masks help them maintain anonymity and control their image in public protests. Avoiding accountability. Wearing a mask can shield them from repercussions of their actions, similar to how do they deflect blame and avoid responsibility in personal relationships. Fear of exposure. By covering their faces, they protect themselves from being exposed, criticized, or judged. A constant fear in their lives. It's an interesting reflection of their deeper psychological tendencies. Need we wonder, then, why masking became so important to them during COVID, up to and including the present, despite the ineffectiveness of the masking protocols in preventing infection and notwithstanding the damage it had on impeding early childhood development, socializing, and learning. So what precisely has caused these collectivist attitudes to develop to the point where they pose an existential risk to the most threatened minority of all, the individual and his or her personal agency and freedom? After all, compelled speech and censorship only exist in authoritarian societies. I will quote from our friend Mikhail Claire-Nissen and his seminal work on the narcissistic nature of social collectivist ideologies. And I'm reading directly from Manipulation and the Weapon of Guilt, Collectivism Exposed. Democracy in itself cannot radicalize collectivism. Therefore, socialism within the context of a democratic system is very different from traditional socialism. In an attempt to protect, maintain, and secure the continuance of what has now ended up in absolute collectivist greed, the Marxists have put into use awful methods of suppressive psychological undermining. Now we find they use orchestrated, designed, and calculated psychological coercion, subliminal conditioning that utilizes the weapons of guilt and enticement. Coercion is accomplished by means that are identical to the methods commonly known as Machiavellian egocentricity, which is described in psychology as the elusive ability to manipulate, subdue, and control others in order to achieve personal ends and desires. This results in weakening the general society, and even worse, further weakening society's emotionally weakest citizens, the codependent collectivists. Conversely, this emotional weakness empowers the radical collectivist part of society even further. The more deprived the collectivist is, and thereby the more manipulative and malignant, the stronger the collectivist. Note, the political spectrum known as left and right is actually being purposely manipulated. The fact is that the essence of freedom lies in the proper limitation of government. Indisputably, throughout history, no source has proven itself more deadly and destructive than the authority invested in government. While this is general knowledge to those who enthusiastically advocate freedoms, most, unfortunately, are uninformed. Accordingly, this creates the perfect environment of deception. Indeed, an accurate political spectrum from right to left would undeniably begin with freedom, example, non-intrusive government, self-sovereignty, and self-determination, defined by little or no government. Thus, the political spectrum would end up with totalitarianism, example, authoritarian dictatorial government, subjugation, and tyranny, defined by unlimited government control. In accordance, a correct paradigm would begin with ideals of anarchy endorsing no government. Next would come the ideals of libertarianism, also known as classical liberalism, endorsing limited government. That's what I am, a classical liberal. Thereafter, would come modern liberalism, known as social liberalism, endorsing greater government. Ultimately, the spectrum would end with the ideals of fascism, socialism, and communism, endorsing totalitarian government. Conversely, perfect deception is achieved through manipulating this spectrum by placing those who are in favor of egalitarianism, the notion of social equality, also known as Marxism, example, communists and socialists, on the left wing. This would place those who are not in favor of social equality on the right wing, which is more than half of the political spectrum, including fascists who are in favor of complete government control. Although the fact is that communism, socialism, and fascism promote the same set of radical, collectivist ideals of totalitarianism, dictatorial, intrusive government. However, by affiliating genuine right-wingers, individuals in favor of minimum government control, with totalitarian fascist regimes, example, Hitler's Nazism, the perfect diversion is created. Hence, relying on ignorance, the left and right paradigm is in fact a well-known method of deception, known as divide and conquer, with one sole purpose: to create confusion and so achieve emotional and intellectual control. From Manipulation and the Weapon of Guilt, Collectivism Exposed, by our friend Mikkel Claire-Nissen. My summating thoughts. The coercive nature of narcissistic social collectivism demands conformity to support the narrative which was created to protect the system of compliance. It is as phony and false as the fake personas they cover themselves in, replete with dyed hair, tats, and piercings that disguise how ingenuine they are. Aposematic coloring is a fascinating phenomenon in the animal kingdom, where bright, conspicuous colors signal danger to potential predators. Think of the vivid hues of a poisoned dart frog or monarch butterflies. This coloring serves as a warning, saying, "Stay away, I'm toxic." Drawing a parallel to narcissism, you might say that narcissists exhibit a kind of social aposematism. They often display traits, I could say that 3 times, couldn't I? Aposematism. They often display traits like grandiosity and excessive confidence to ward off criticism and attract admiration. Just as aposematic coloring is a survival strategy in nature, narcissistic behaviors are strategies to protect their self-esteem and maintain control over how they are perceived by others. In both cases, it's about creating an image that serves a protective function, and I can see right through them. I have phony dar. I can spot a phony from miles away. And I have a confession to make. Triggering them, it makes my day. I hope I've triggered some of you. These are things to think and pray about, because pride, it was the first sin. It's why Satan was cast out of heaven. God bless you.